Jeremiah Smith, Arvell Reese, and the Ohio State Buckeyes take on the Purdue Boilermakers in a November matchup. Ohio State hits the road after a decisive win against the Penn State Nittany Lions. That game had a lot of implications. Well, it was thought of to have a lot of implications going into the season. Ohio State still had to take care of business against a stacked roster at Penn State. Without their starting quarterback, that team leaned on the run against the Buckeyes. In the first half, it looked like Penn State going into halftime, 17-14. That team with a takeaway towards the end of the half would come into the second. And what did the Buckeyes do? They came out in the second. Clearly, there were probably some pointed words from Ryan Day to his team as far as making the adjustments, what they needed to do in the second half. They went right down the field. You saw big explosive plays from this Buckeye offense. They have an ability to lean on teams, I think, that's above any other offense in the country. Now, this defense for Ohio State possesses an inordinate amount of talent that Purdue and Ryan Brown, Malachi Thomas, and this Purdue offense is going to have to go up against. You're looking at potential first-round pick Kenyatta Jackson at defensive end. He had one of his best, arguably probably his best career day against Penn State. You've got Caden McDonald, who could be a first-round pick on the interior on the defensive line. You have Sonny Styles, who's guaranteed to be, at the very least, a second-round pick in April. Arvell Reese, who's likely a top 15, top 20 guy, might even go top 10. He's got 6.5 sacks on the season right now. And then there's, of course, Caleb Downs, who arguably is the best defensive player in college football. Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, I'll make an argument for either one. Doesn't really matter. They're both terrific players, and they will be hunting the Purdue players. Whoever has the football, they'll be coming after him. That trio of players between Downs, Styles, and Reese is as good as any on that side of the football. Now, what makes this Ohio State offense to go on that side? What makes them click to a level where they play a complementary style with that defense? Look, it's his passing attack. Julian Sayin through 8 games, 80.7% completion percentage. That is 3.3% better than the previous best statistical season for completion percentage in history. Bo Nix 2 seasons ago for Oregon in 2023 had a 77.4% completion percentage. Julian Sayin is outdoing that. If you're Purdue, you have to find a way to limit the big plays downfield and force Ohio State to march the ball methodically down there. This Ohio State attack with these two outside weapons is the most dominant in the country. Jeremiah Smith may be the best player in the country, and then Carnell Tate, more likely than not, will be the first wide receiver taken in the 2026 NFL draft. He's got the length. He's tall. He's quick. He's good with his hands. I mean, when you see these deep balls from Julian Sayin, he's blasting by these defenders. The ball's coming back to him. That's how it's been coached from Brian Hartline, from Ryan Day. They don't want Sayin to overthrow these first-round pick wide receivers to make them come back to the ball and make a play on it instead of it being a potential incomplete pass thrown out in front of him. Jeremiah Smith got one-on-one opportunities. Carnell Tate, he got his one-on-ones against Penn State, and they made them pay. Combined, the two guys went for over 240 yards together, 3 touchdowns on the day. A lot of explosiveness from the get-go. 3 catches for Smith in about 45 yards on that first possession. This offense still has other threats. Brandon Ennis out of the slot. Max Klare, the tight end, is still one of the best in the country. For Purdue to have a shot, I really think it is making this Buckeye team march the length of the field. We haven't even given the credit to this offensive line well enough for Ohio State. There were times against this Nittany Lion defense where Penn State was getting pressure on Julian Sayin. You know how many times they sacked Sayin on the day? 0. They did not put Julian Sayin on the ground, and he was not sacked on the day. He did take a couple of hits. He hit the deck, but none for a negative play. He was able to evade, throw the ball out in the vicinity of a player. He was able to make a couple of tight throws where he was about to absorb that contact. He's been playing at a level that now has him as the Heisman frontrunner at this point, above Fernando Mendoza, who's right there above Ty Simpson. We talked about this beginning in, I would say, October, that Indiana-Ohio State game, it was right after Indiana beat Oregon. I was saying that Indiana-Ohio State game, if they play in the Big Ten championship game, that will be most likely for the Heisman Trophy. Whoever wins that outplays the other quarterback. Now, for Ohio State playing Purdue, what's fascinating about this matchup is you're playing a Purdue team that just played Michigan. Now, when you go watch the film in Purdue's game against Michigan for this past week, of course, they'll take into account the other 8 games that they played for this 2-7 Purdue football team. But you'll look at this sort of style that Michigan played. How did they have success? Well, they attacked on the ground. And when they're looking at that film, they're also going to be helping themselves out for a matchup they have in just a couple of weeks now. It's incredible that the game is only a few weeks away. But how was Michigan attacking them? How did they have success? And then Matt Patricia will be taking notes on the defensive style of what he can do to defend that Michigan side. And then Ryan Day is looking as an offense. How can we replicate a bit of the success that Michigan had on the ground? Look, this Michigan team had a lot of success running on the edges of the defense, out on the perimeter. Jordan Marshall, without Justice Haynes in the lineup, having an impact. He had 185 yards, 3 touchdowns. This freshman has been incredible for this Wolverine team. There's really no reason why they won't be 9-2 before that game at the end of November, Thanksgiving weekend. Purdue gave their best shot at the end of the game. It's a 5-point ball game. There's 4 or 5 minutes left. They just need to stop. They can get the football back with a chance to either win the game with a touchdown or get it back with a chance to send it to overtime with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. They can't do it. Michigan runs the entire clock out. And they went up against a quarterback in Bryce Underwood who was inefficient. He was inaccurate throughout the day, did have a couple of nice plays. There were drops from the wide receivers. Once again, this has been a common theme for this Wolverine team the entire season, the inability to secure the football and catch the football and provide security for their true freshman quarterback. Purdue was able to take advantage and keep this game close. It was a 14-10 game in the fourth quarter, 21-16 game in the fourth quarter at the end after that Purdue touchdown. Didn't get the 2-point conversion, which you had to go to, but you liked what you saw from Purdue. In my opinion, that this team stuck with the ground. They committed to a game plan that stylistically wouldn't be all that sexy. It wouldn't win them all those viewer points. And going out to the Ohio State Buckeyes, I would exactly emulate. I would go out there, do the exact same thing where you run the football. You try and rush the football 40 times against this Buckeye team. What does that do? It runs that clock. It shortens this game. Ryan Brown, he only had 24 attempts, completed 19 of them. That's right about 80% completion on the day. That's very efficient. You would love for him to do that against Ohio State. It's going to be a lot tougher because the linebackers for the Buckeyes are far and wide better than what Michigan has. Frankly, they're better than any other team, and what they have in Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, better than any other off-ball group of linebackers in the country. Now, Michigan up front in Jay-Sean Barham and Derek Moore and Rayshawn Benny, like these are some of the best defensive linemen in the country. Ohio State's got a great group of guys, but there's not as much of a talent discrepancy there. Michigan's front is very good. They're able to sort of limit the full impact of Purdue to just completely lean on them at times. They're able to get into the backfield and have tackles for loss. They had 7 tackles for loss. They got pressure on the quarterback. They had 3 sacks. That's how Michigan lives. They can bend a little bit to the point where teams are moving the ball down the field, but they rely on penalties. They rely on holding calls on teams trying to run the football on them and mistakes for teams to turn the football over. And of course, the quarterback for Purdue, Ryan Brown, had that fumble that he lost in this game. This is, of course, a near impossible task for Purdue. It doesn't really matter this game being at home. It helps, of course, that you don't have to go silent count in the shoe against Ohio State. But if you're trying to run that offense and attack, the number one place that the only sort of advice I would have in watching every snap of the Buckeyes this season is they can be susceptible to areas over the middle of the field. And you saw that against Penn State. I was curious about the amount of zone coverage that they played, only rushing 4 or 5, when Grunkemeyer for Penn State, it was a 10-0 game, and Penn State went down there and scored to make it 10-7 on a long drive. They converted a 3rd and 10, I believe also a 3rd and 8. We're sitting in the pocket. Ohio State's in zone coverage. They're in I think it looked to me like they were in a variation of a match zone. It looked like it was disguised between like a cover 3, cover 2 look. And they were rotating on that throughout the day. It turns into man coverage after the pattern distribution and guys match up, but it was purely zone coverage. You got Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and hook curls, and then trying to work their way into their full drop. And Penn State was able to take advantage of that. They had multiple 3rd down and long conversions in that first half, and that led to points. They had 14 points, able to take advantage, be opportunistic off of the takeaway at the end of the first half. I personally thought that it was forward progress, that they would have marked that and that have not been allowed to go back the other direction for a touchdown, but nonetheless, they don't call it. But Penn State, 8 of 15, they were quite efficient against a Buckeye team that went into that game. I believe it was the number 1 red zone defense in the country, the number 1 3rd down defense in all of college football, and being able to have success in the 2 possessions that they did have goal-to-go spots and score on them. So Purdue, you get to see a little bit that this team isn't completely invincible on that side of the football. I'm speaking to Ohio State fans right now, and I know that they were nervous. Going into the half, 17-14, it felt like a game that should have been a score in a much wider margin. They thought probably going into the half that the Buckeyes would come out and play it close to the vest, not wanting to make a mistake. The Buckeyes did the opposite of that. They came out saying, we have a talent advantage on the perimeter of this. Let's take advantage of it. Let's take our shots. They do exactly that. And you see the bomb to Carnell, Tate, and then the C.J. Donaldson run. Buckeyes up by 10. It really took the wind out of Penn State sails going into halftime, and the mojo, the momentum. Ohio State gets the stop, and then they're off to the races. Jeremiah Smith with a huge catch for 58 yards, and he's able to get in again for another touchdown score. This is the type of game where I'm expecting the Buckeyes can sort of pick a number that they want to score on Purdue. If they want to stylistically play a game where they ground and pound, run the football, and win this game by a score of 31-3, that could be available to them. If they want to throw the football down the field, continue to establish that confidence for Sayin. You cannot do enough of that building steam into a road game against Michigan, building steam before a Big Ten champion or the college football playoff. This is still a first-year starting quarterback. You need him with peak confidence before those large matchups. And frankly, I think what's huge is a game maybe against Michigan late in the season, or if you were to lose, you're still in the playoff. Or if you were to lose in the Big Ten champ game to Indiana, you would still be in the playoff. Those are games that are not elimination games. That's been the incredible thing to me about the new expanded college football playoff, is that, all right, you can lose a game and your season's not over. That can really help a young quarterback in Sayin to continue to develop and actually truly get better each week. And you saw him throw 20 of 23 passes, and he completed 20 of 23, 4 touchdowns, only 3 incompletions, 320 yards on the day. Again, still a good Penn State defense. What has impressed me the most, I'll say this about Brian Hartline, is that he's been leaning on their strengths. You absolutely could have tried to win that game by 10, 13 points, not try to lose it. You play not to lose, run the ball, make sure you don't turn the football over, and I've won the game against Penn State. Instead, he came out and went with his best pitch. He went with his fastball, his 101-mile-an-hour two-seam fastball that he can throw consistently. And what did that do? It opened up the run game later on. They still ran the ball for 164 yards, over 5 yards a carry, because they were able to really lean on Penn State at that point. Penn State at the end of that game were just fully on their heels and trying to prevent the deep ball and not let that get by them. And then you saw Bo Jackson start to open up and get some really good carries. You saw the youngster Isaiah West. He got more carries in this game. This is a 4-deep backfield. Donaldson, Peoples, Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, the youngster. They're all getting involved in this offense. Ryan Day doesn't care. Brian Hartline doesn't care. He will go at the hot hand. It looks like Jackson and West provide a little bit more of explosiveness, quicker-footed guys, whereas Peoples is a little bit of a balance. And then C.J. Donaldson, he's your hammer. He comes in there to hit people, to get the short, important, heavy yards. You're going to have to lower the shoulder, bring that 230-pound frame, and be a factor. I mentioned earlier about the weapons. So Max Klare, of course, he's the transfer tight end from Purdue. Purdue wishes that they still had him, of course, on their team. And you heard a little bit about Max Klare in this offseason and the adjustment period that was necessary for him to get used to the culture at Ohio State. So who takes him under his wing to help him? Well, that's Jeremiah Smith. The sophomore, younger player has to take the older and more experienced player to instill a little bit of that dog mentality in him. They're working out together. Ohio State strength coach, Coach Mick Marody, he's able to set that up. And you've seen a version of Max Klare. And I also think that it's been a little bit of a sort of pass down of mentality. Is Jeremiah Smith was mentioned during the Penn State versus Buckeye broadcast of not being upset, being a very unselfish player. Max Klare's numbers have not been remotely close to what he would have expected or wanted when he came over to Ohio State. But I believe truly that he understands his role in this offense, that everyone will get their opportunities, that it can be game to game, quarter to quarter, drive to drive for who's going to eat, for who's going to get their targets and get their opportunities. But at some point, Max Klare will absolutely be a large factor in games going forward. There's no doubt that that's going to happen because teams are going to continue to try and evolve game plans. You can't really double Smith and Tate without leaving the middle of the field or leaving Ennis or Bo Jackson. Max Klare with very favorable matchups in the pass game. So it's just putting such an onus on teams to try and establish and play around with defenses. Frankly, you try all this to stop it. One of the answers is just you kind of can't stop it. What's the most that you can limit it? Can you get this team into short yardage areas? You've seen how they love to take their shots. Joel Klatt mentioned it. Between the 40 and the 40, this team is taking shots, trying to score touchdowns because they've been a little bit more shaky in the red zone. When it's been condensed and tighter, it's been tougher for this team to score the same way it's been tougher for offenses to score on the Buckeyes inside the goal line. Ohio State, when they've got all that space to work with, they get their one-on-ones and can take their shots to these wide receivers. Well, they've been as good as anyone with the efficiency, with the passes over 30 yards in the air. Julian Sayin with 3 passes over 45 yards on the day against this Nittany Lion offense. Those are numbers that some teams have for half a season. They only have sometimes 5 or 6 of those plays an entire game. It feels like the Buckeyes could probably have another 3, 4, 5 of them against Purdue. It'll be available to them if they want it. The question is, do they go to it? Now, I'm expecting them to lean into this ground game, this mentality. You sense that Ohio State and Ryan Day was somewhat frustrated by the ground game, especially in that first half, trying to get that established. He knows how important it is to control a game script. But again, I'm going to push back on that. I think that Buckeye team that he coached with C.J. Stroud at the helm at quarterback clearly was more of a finesse team. That they've got who now is a quarterback that is going to be, a future All-Pro, Pro Bowler player. At that level, that's who he is in C.J. Stroud. You've got that in Julian Sayin. And, I'll frankly say it. I was surprised at his mobility, getting away from denied Dennis Sutton. 3rd and 5, shakes it, picks up the first down. It leads to the touchdown. But that's your identity as an offense. Okay, you haven't had a great amount of success running the ball. You might not be an elite running team. That does not mean that you can't be an elite defense and you can't have success against this Purdue defense. Now, another guy, for example, Purdue wishes that they had is Dylan Thieneman, the All-American level safety that's now playing for Oregon and a major factor in the back end. He's the guy that sealed the game for Penn State in that wideout. The interception against Drew Aller in the second overtime. That was Dylan Thieneman, the transfer from Purdue. Comes over to Oregon, leaves Purdue. So 2 great football players that Purdue loses to the transfer portal. You talk about this new era, how it sort of levels the even amount of playing field between teams, where teams are able to poach and bring talented players from other rosters, and you look at how successful these guys are for, let's say, bottom tier football teams in their conferences. No disrespect to Purdue. That's just the fact of the matter. And the Buckeyes poach their tight end, and Oregon gets their safety. That's just how it is now in this day and age in college football. Recruiting is so important, but it's also the evaluation of talent and what you have to understand about the holes in your roster, or you're looking for depth to be able to add to your team if you want to be stronger. This is a Buckeye team that loves 12 personnel, having 2 tight ends on the field, that they've loved to get down by the red zone, first and goal inside the 5. They want to run the football 4 times in a row. 13, 14 personnel, bring in extra linemen and pound the football. Almost say, all right, we're going to run the football 3, 4 times in a row. Let's just see if you can stop us. It has worked out for them inside there. But again, the identity of this team as an offense right now, you are really starting to see it. I think that this team's offense has even more potential, as crazy as that sounds, and that semifinal team that lost to Georgia that didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba. There was Emeka Ibuka, there was Marvin Harrison Jr., but these guys in Smith and Tate, I would take over what that wide receiving core was last year. The way that Julian Sayin is operating this offense, again, I can't believe the words are coming out of my mouth, but I will take this unit. We're looking, I believe, at a unit that is going to start getting comparisons to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, that 2019 LSU run, and they will get those opportunities because, again, this defense will keep giving them the football. The Buckeyes have not trailed in the second half of any game. The most they've trailed in this entire season is by 3 points. They trailed by 3 to Washington. They trailed by 3 to Minnesota. That's been it. No trailing in the second half. For the most part, the second half has been utter domination, thrashing teams. If it's been close early second half, well, that got just about taken care of. The only close game, Texas had a possession to try and tie it there at the end of that fourth quarter, week 1, and that was it. Ohio State slams the door shut. Caleb Downs with the tackle on 4th down, and that's that. That win starting to look a little bit better now, isn't it? All this talk about the Buckeyes, they haven't played anyone. Well, how about Texas? They've got top 10 wins against a top 10 Oklahoma team, against a top 10 Vanderbilt team. So now we're going to bring up the fact that they haven't played anyone. Texas isn't anyone, as people start to mention them back again in the college football playoff picture if they've, rattled off 4 straight wins. So I understand it. College football is such a week-to-week sport. The NFL is a little bit less of that. We're in this world where there's upsets in college football with the rankings element compared to the NFL, where you have these massive shifts in what can happen, narratives. Just as Penn State, you go from a team with national championship hopes to your playoff life being decimated in a matter of 15 days and your head coach gets fired. That's how life comes at you fast in college football. For Purdue, look, it's an opportunity every time you play a ranked team. It's an opportunity every time that you play the number 1 team in the country. Look over at that side of the ball, and you will see some of the premier athletes, not just in college football, but in the realm of all of football, that these guys will step onto NFL fields within the next year or 2 and be starters, and then eventually be stars and superstars, maybe even for a couple of them. That they're just that talented. I believe that the preparation for this week for Purdue you can say that it can't be any different, but you got to be serious. It has to be, because this team has shown the capability that they can put together 14 points. You could be in a tie game, second quarter, you're down by 14, 2 scores, and it just gets away from you very quick. So this is a type of game where every snap matters. Intensity is key. You have to understand your role, your job, your principles. If you want to pull off this upset or at least be in a competitive game, I would say a competitive game here is 2 scores in the second half, 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Usually a competitive game means it's a 10-point or less margin, or it's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. I'm going to change that a little bit just because of how large of a favorite the Buckeyes in here and how little of a shot they're given. Just look at what the Buckeyes did to Purdue last year in that game as Ohio State was marching on forward towards what ended up being a very disappointing finish to the season, but then a historic run into a national championship, marching through the college football playoff with all those wins. Purdue, I like this team and what their makeup is. I really give them a ton of slack and respect for this coaching staff to deal with losing those types of caliber players. Just imagine what Purdue's look like. Maybe they have a chance to beat Michigan in that game. Dylan Thieneman can come up and make tackles. They've got another option to go to. They've had close losses. Minnesota on the road, tight game. Rutgers, 3-point football game that they drop. I thought they gave USC a very good run at their money. So this is a Purdue team that's got pride. They're going to give what they can. But again, I got to tell you, it starts from the beginning. That Buckeye team in the playoff last year, they scored opening drive touchdowns all 4 of those games. This Ohio State team, what did they do against Penn State? They came out, bam, bam, bam. They went right to their out pitch. They went right to their best. Jeremiah Smith, 3 catches that opening drive. First play of the game, they hit Carnell Tate over the middle for 19 yards. Why Penn State decided to punt the football on 4th and 3? I get it. You're trying to flip field position. Ball is at the 42. 4th and 3 here. You're trying to send a message. You're moving the ball. You don't really get opportunities like that all that often against this Ohio State defense. I thought go for it. I didn't really agree with the call from Terry Smith to punt the football there. What do the Buckeyes do? They make him pay for that position, for that decision, excuse me. I really believe these possessions are critical, and you'll see a Penn State team try and make the most of them, be bleeding the clock as much as they can. For the Buckeyes, I think you try and extend the game. I really believe that you try and come out throwing. What do throws lead to? Well, first saying it's been a lot of completions, so the clock continues to run. But against teams that you're better than, you want a long game. You want a game where you get as many possessions as you can, and then you get a big lead. Of course, you want to shorten the game, you get out of town with a win, and then move on to the next matchup. And when I look at this secondary for the Buckeyes, and I look at Davison Igbinosun and his physicality, and opposite him, there's Jermaine Matthews, I think about this Purdue wide receiving core and how they'll be challenged. Again, think about how much better Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews are because of what they go up against in practice every single day. Think about Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott Jr., guys that have seen the field this year. Aaron Scott saw the field last year in the college football playoff. You talk about these players and going up against this level of talent every day in practice, and then they go out there against a Penn State, a team that struggled mightily, and then against Purdue coming up, it just somewhat makes me question. I thought we would see a little bit more man coverage against Penn State this past week. It's clearly worked for teams going up against that Penn State offense to play man coverage. Those wide receivers don't do a great job of separating, creating easy throwing lanes for their quarterback. They did a lot better against zone. So does Matt Patricia try and adjust a little bit of that. You really didn't see a huge adjustment come. The Buckeyes had a little bit tighter on the rush lanes, and Penn State wasn't able to move the football really at all on the ground in that second half, and that put them in 2nd and 9, and put them in 3rd and 6, and what does that lead to? Well, Arvell Reese on about 3rd and 5 plus, I really say about 3rd and 4 plus. He's been playing edge on 3rd and 4 plus for the majority of the snaps this season, and in that edge spot, he's been phenomenal. 6.5 sacks on the year. It makes you sort of wonder what his statistics would be like if he had been playing edge every single down. I had a conversation with people that really enjoy the NFL and like to sort of talk about contracts a little bit here, not to just sway it to a little bit of a pivot. But so outside linebackers of the NFL, you got Micah Parsons, $46.5 million, Aiden Hutchinson making $45, and there's a question of whether Arvell Reese will be playing outside linebacker or edge linebacker at the NFL. Well, the highest paid off-ball linebacker, inside backer in the NFL is Fred Warner, making $21 million a year. Roquan Smith is right after that with 20. You go down to the 4 or 5 spot, they're making, I think, like 16, 15 million a year. You go down to the 4 or 5 spot, you're looking at TJ Watt, Myles Garrett making around $39, $40 million a year. You're talking about 2 to 3 times more money at the edge position. Now, that's not to say Arvell Reese was just going to play edge rusher to make more money, but there's that value of that type of player on your roster. I really think that his true potential to be a skyrocketed guy continuing to go up draft boards is teams looking at his potential, seeing his pure athleticism, right? Also the length and the size, 6'4", 243 pounds, putting him on the edge, getting after the quarterback, being a guy that can impact a game at any moment with a sack, a tackle for loss in a big moment. That him doing that, it just threatens a right tackle the whole day, a left tackle the whole day. But again, you think about that length over the middle of the field and you pair that next to Sonny Styles, these guys 6'4", 6'5", 245 pounds, and the speed that they play with. It's just scary units. When you watch this Purdue-Ohio State game, I want you to look at number 0 and number 8. There's also number 2 coming around there. He's a fun player to watch. But those two linebackers, they basically dictate what this defense will look like in the speed that they play with. They play with instincts. They come downhill and hit. The coverage ability of Arvell Reese, obviously that can be improved, and that's a little bit of the process as an inside backer. But I got to say, I see him being a Micah, an Abdul quarter of what he was at Penn State. The Buckeyes, it seemingly doesn't look like have another year to maybe bump him up to that position. In this Matt Patricia defense, it's sort of that mold of what the Patriots were, and they had larger defensive ends in those systems. And they had 6'5", 265-pound guys like Keanu Jackson, a guy that's 6'5", 275 pounds. And you look across there, you've got Caden Curry, who's 6'5", 265, 270 pounds. And they're more of that defensive end mold spot instead of this modern day. Well, you see a lot of these teams are going to these edge players with a bit of that speed and being that edge speed rusher off the ball. So it's sort of those fun dynamics. Let me know down below if you want me to go into that more so in future videos. It's fascinating to me to have that conversation. Do you think Arvell should play off ball or on the ball edge in the National Football League and get after that bread? Who knows? He could be a $50 million a year player at the next level if he makes the type of impact that he's been doing. But that's what you love, is seeing young guys, someone that has had success, step into a star type role and do nothing but impress his teammates, his coaches, the scouts, general managers, and then of course respectful, opponents and other teams watching the film be like, oh my goodness, like we've got to do it. 0, 8, and 2, and then 97 and 92 for the Buckeyes are playing at that level, and you just start to think this is a defense that is going to have 10 or 11, almost just about every single player on this defense drafted. You go to last year, 8 defensive players drafted. And then there's Davison Igbinosun, who will be drafted. There's Caleb Downs, who will be drafted. There's Sonny Styles, who's going to be drafted. All those guys. That's an entire starting defensive unit of players that end up that will be drafted. That's absurd to say that you are just literally looking at an NFL defense, and that's the exact same story here. There's no one on that defense that doesn't have draftable traits, abilities, the pedigree of that. So we're truly looking at a great football team here that is far and away the favorite to win the Big Ten, to win the national championship. Let's enjoy this game against Purdue. If you're a Purdue fan, I don't want to hear a bit of the negativity in this one. Try and enjoy being on the field with this team and just try to keep that positive mindset and see what it's like and what would be necessary to try and be at that level. If you're a Buckeye fan, look, it's going to get a lot more pressurized situations, stressful, most likely at the end of the year with games meaning more. So this is one of the games towards the rest of the end of the back half of the schedule where you'll have what looks to be a little bit of a breather to enjoy it, whereas it kind of was at the end of that Penn State game. We've had a lot of those games this season, and it looks like you get that once again for this matchup. So I'm going to come out with the prediction. I think the Buckeyes handle Purdue on the road. This team has been wonderful for people to bet on. I'm pretty sure they covered every game because they covered Penn State. They might. I think their record against the spread this season, they're 8-0. Are they 8-0 against the spread? If you just put your money on the Buckeyes to cover, how have you done? I think they've done a pretty 7-1 overall, 8-0. I'll take the Buckeyes 41-6 to win this game. This is an Ohio State team that's rolling, my number one team in the country. Again here, I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm a diehard fan. We're talking about this, trying to be impartial. It's very hard to do that. The level of talent that they have. If you're a Buckeye fan, please subscribe for more content from me in the future. I do break down other college games, all the NFL matchups, but always fun to talk about the Bucks. And then if you're a Purdue fan stopping by or a fan of another team, appreciate you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown and video. Look for more college and NFL content in the future. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. No matter the team that you root for, I'm glad that you stopped by. Leave me some thoughts down below in the comments. What you think of this game, overall, the playoff picture. We've got now college football playoff rankings. First one out on Tuesday. Recording this video is before that, but that's exciting news now. Are the Buckeyes 1? Is Indiana 1? Are they 2? So we get to see all of that as we march toward the end of the college football regular season. Thank you so much for watching this Blitz with Blender episode. Again, I am Josh Blender, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blender, hi everybody, I'm Josh Blender. To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.